Do you think UFOs, the paranormal, weird history, cryptozoology, and outsider art are pretty darn cool? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to High Strangeness with your host, Steve Berg.
The video version. Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of High Strangeness. Today, I have a fellow Midwesterner. My guy already messing this up. Midwesterner on. That's a lot of syllables, Jason.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It is. It's hard to say.
You're torturing yourself.
Thank you. Midwesty, another Midwesty dude, I'll say. Anyways, great start, Steve. Anyways, today I have on my buddy, Jason Offutt, a fellow Midwesty dude. I've been a fan of Jason's work for a long time now. I heard him back on Timothy Banal's wonderful show, Banal of America. Gosh, probably like going back 15 years ago. And I've been a fan ever since. So it's finally great to actually meet and talk to you, my friend.
Hey, Steve, it sure is. And I feel kind of bad right now because it's high strangeness. I didn't get high first.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
All right.
I'm sure there's enough THC coursing through your veins from college that you can go back into that mindset.
Yeah.
No, not necessary to be high. Just high in life, my friend. High strangeness is what
That's all you need, man.
Exactly. Folks, I'm going to read a little bit of a bio so you can get to know my guest a little bit, okay? Jason Offutt grew up on a farm in rural Missouri and lived on a steady diet of Star Trek reruns and monster movies. Over the years, Jason's fascination grew for science fiction, horror, and dark fantasy where things never are what they seem. Jason is best known for paranormal works like Chasing American Monsters and Darkness Walks, humorous science fiction such as his time and dimension hopping novel, So You Had to Build a Time Machine, great title, and his non-zombie novel, Bad Day for the Apocalypse, and the horror duology, The Girl in the Corn and The Boy from Two Worlds. He teaches university journalism and cooks for his family. You can find more about Jason at his website, www.jasonoffutt.com, which I will link in the show notes. Jason, welcome to the show officially.
Steve, this is great. I'm glad to be on. Very happy.
Thank you, my brother. And now, right off the bat, I love, actually really quick, would you mind, do you have never mind. I put it on there. You mentioned that you cook for your family.
Yes.
Jason, we here at High Strange just love talking about food. What are some of the dishes that are crowd pleasers for the whole family?
I think the favorite for the whole family has to be chicken shawarma.
Okay. Now, are you marinating the chicken in your own spices?
Yes.
Walk me through that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah. All right. Well, what the spices you use some, of course, a little bit of salt, some olive oil,
yes,
curry powder,
yes,
ground cumin, lemon juice, and garlic. And it's my philosophy of cooking is you can never use too much garlic.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you marinate the chicken in that, and you can't marinate chicken too long in something as acidic as lemon because it starts cooking in the marinade.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of different ways you do this. I do it the improper way, but it's the lazy way. I just throw it in a crock pot.
Yeah.
But the way you're supposed to do it is cut the chicken up, skewer it, and put it on the grill. Which it's better that way, honestly. But it's -3 degrees here right now.
Yeah, it's
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, school's been called off for 2 days in a row. Like it's frigid in the Midwest. I'll tell you what though, chicken shawarma is a beautiful thing. Now, are we putting this in a gyro style wrap? Or are we making like a Mediterranean bowl?
It really depends on what the family wants. Sometimes I'll take pitas and chop up red onions, tomatoes, cucumbers. I make my own tzatziki sauce.
So do I.
Yeah, and I make everything from scratch. Even I'm going to make bagels sometime this afternoon for breakfast tomorrow.
What?
Bagels they're not hard, but you don't not only have to knead and give them time to rise, but you've got to boil them, broil them, and then bake them. So it takes a long time.
But I love it. Well, the thing about cooking, I think when you enjoy it, to me, like I love art. I do a lot of art. I've always been an artsy person. Cooking is just as artistically satisfying as anything else I do.
Okay, 100%. Oh, I completely agree. When I was young, up through college, I drew a lot, and I've always written. The two art forms, and cooking just falls right in line with it.
It does. It does. And it's like a painting you can eat.
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
And sometimes the painting sucks.
That's true. It happens.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta take risks.
I tried to make homemade ramens the other day, and the liquid, the broth was delicious. The noodles, man, I did not do a good job on.
Noodles are tough. Now I can make a lasagna noodle, something simple, but like I don't have a nice pasta maker that's going to cut, it into like an angel hair per se. Mm-hmm. But when my ship comes in, I'm going to get a good pasta roller. Yeah,
I would. There a number of kitchen appliances I would love to have, but yeah, I got to wait for that ship.
Yeah, well, the good stuff is expensive, man.
No.
That's why I stick to fancy sauces. You can do that in anything.
Oh my God, sauces are. I fixed something last night. I would normally use heavy cream and cheese to do this, but trying to be more healthy.
I hear you.
Instead of that, I used I made a roe with vegetable broth, and I took, instead of cheese, the only dairy I used was cottage cheese.
Sure.
I put it in the blender to liquefy it, and it was fantastic. I had hamburger and some onions and potatoes cut in medallions.
I love this cottage cheese hack to have a lower fat content of some kind of creaminess.
Yeah, and it worked wonderfully. And the family liked it. Even the 10-year-old, who's picky as hell, enjoyed it.
Wow, that's a good, folks. That's a free tip right there from Jason Offutt.
Yeah.
Jason, well, I was telling you before this. So I heard you, years ago on. I don't mean to emphasize years like it was like a century. But it was
100 years old.
Jason is 150 years old, my friends. No. But I've been a longtime fan and friend of Tim Binnall's for a long time at Binnall of America. And you were a frequent guest on that show. And I always loved your episodes. And there was an episode where you were talking about this book called, I have it right in front of me, What Lurks Beyond.
Hi-oh!
And it is such an amazing book. And if you don't mind, I'll explain the premise of the book. The idea of the book is that Jason is like looking into Forteanna, high strangeness, whatever you want to call it, 100 miles from where he lives. And first off, I'm such a broken record on this. I feel like if you're into this stuff and into documenting this stuff, the first thing and the most important thing you need to do is document the weirdness around you. Because, like in a place like Nebraska, there's not many people doing that. And I feel
a lot of cool stuff in Nebraska,
right? And that's what I'm discovering. But like, I really want to tell you, and I mean this sincerely. Like, your book was massively inspirational to me when I started like really moved back to Nebraska from LA and really wanted to like, well, what can I do? And like, because I had some time off because of COVID, and there was not many jobs around. And I'm like, well, I'm going to look at high strangeness around me because I remember your book. And you have sent me on like almost a 4-year odyssey of like voraciously trying to document, find out, talking to the old timers, protecting all this folklore and legend and high strangeness. And so my hat's off to you, my friend.
Hey, I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you. That really means a lot to me. It does. Knowing that my work was, an inspiration to somebody.
Yeah.
You don't go into this thinking, hey, I'm going to be an inspiration to someone someday. And that's great. That's awesome.
Well, and truly, like, I don't know if I would have started this podcast had I not like said like, hey, I'm going to make it my business to get all up in Nebraska, weird stories. But I think I focused on Nebraska because of your book. I'm like, well, I can do this. I can actually drive to these places and check them out myself.
That was the key, because I wanted to go to these places. I wanted to see things. I wanted to interview people who've encountered things, and they were there for the most part.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, just before we, because I mentioned to you, I want to kind of just pick apart some of the stories in this fantastic book, and just other like little Midwest tales. But how did you get into all this strange and unusual stuff? I know it sounds like you're a science fiction kid, but you grew up on a farm in rural Missouri. What's your origin story with the weird?
All right, I've always been the weird. I was the weird kid. Scholastic book club. Order forms. Man, I was getting. Buddies would be getting books on baseball players and biographies on presidents, and I was getting books on the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot.
I can relate.
Yeah. I figured. So I was interested in that, and when I was really young, I've always been a voracious reader, and I was always into newspapers. I loved reading the news. I know I'm that kind of guy, and I worked in the industry for 17 years, so it was honest. But I remember back in 1973, I was 8 years old, and there were stories in the Kansas City newspaper, the Kansas City Star, about a Bigfoot being sighted multiple times over a couple-week period in Louisiana, Missouri. And I'm like, what? I live in Missouri.
Yeah.
But Bigfoot's my neighbor, so I just drove my mom crazy talking about Bigfoot and reading about Bigfoot and going out, in the cornfields looking for footprints. And that is my monster origin story. The paranormal in general, I was about the same age around. I might have been 9. I saw a full-bodied apparition in my house.
Whoa!
Yeah, I mean, I was walking out. It was an afternoon. I remember the sun was out because everything was bright. I walked from my room into the hallway right across from my door because that's where we kept all of our bookshelves, and I was probably getting a World Book Encyclopedia on dinosaurs or something. And there was a little boy standing in the hallway. He was about 6 years old. He had brown hair, parted on the right side, wearing a blue flannel shirt and blue jeans, and I could see the bookshelf through him.
So it was like holographic-ish, like kind of like, there was a transparency to this thing.
Right. He was there, and I could see details, but he wasn't solid. I could see through him.
I'm not trying to be jokey about this, but I'm literally trying to just picture in my head, and I'm always so curious about this. Did it kind of have that look of when, like, Ben Kenobi dies in Star Wars, and he kind of, from there on out, appears apparitional with, like, like...
He wasn't, there wasn't a glow, or it was more like Princess Diana's invisible jet from the 1970s Super Friends.
Okay,
if you know what I'm talking about. You can see the outline and you can see details, but you can see through the whole thing.
Right. Did you say Princess Diana had a see-through jet?
Wonder
Woman.
The Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. I thought you said Princess Diana for a second. Like, she did? Well, she might have.
I'm sure her husband could have afforded it.
Exactly, if anyone could. That's amazing.
But yeah, we stared at each other for, I don't know how long it was. It was probably 10 seconds, although I couldn't, gauge time at all. Right. And he blinked. And that broke the shock I was in. And I turned and walked into my bedroom, shut the door, and I didn't talk to anybody for, about it for 30 years.
Wow.
And, then I talked to my mom and my sisters, and they'd never experienced anything in the house. It was just me.
Incredible. And then I did, on your website, I did read that your whole family had a UFO experience.
Yeah, I mean, my sisters were older, so they'd moved out of the house by that time. But it was me and my mom and dad. I was about 14, 15 years old, and Dad came in from the field. It was in the spring, so you stay out all day planting. And he didn't come in. And Mom said, go check on him. So I went out there, and he was standing, leaning against his pickup and staring into the sky. We had another house about a mile away from us, but there was a big cornfield in between us. Mm-hmm. And he was staring up over the field, and I asked what was going on, and he pointed, and I looked up, and there was it looked like a, hole punch paper. Yeah. Hole punch. It looked like a hole punch in the night sky. It was, stars were everywhere because we were 6 miles away from any type of city. So, and it was just a blank spot. And then he said, just listen. And I did. And there was this weird hum. And I went in and got Mom, and she came out and she saw it. And then the phone rang and they sent me in. But I went in and answered the phone, and it was our neighbor from the farmhouse across the field. And he's like, do y'all see that thing in the sky? So at that point, it wasn't us, saying, it misidentified. It was, corroboration. It was, that was pretty cool. And then eventually I stayed out there, and it eventually just rose and vanished.
That is absolutely fantastic. What did that have like any kind of impact on you in terms of like you getting into this stuff, or I don't know, and maybe in other ways?
I was already into it. Now the apparition had an impact on me because you know what, I've never really been afraid of death. I hope I don't drop right now though, because I got too much stuff to do. But I've known since I was a kid that there's something after we pass on, because I freaking saw it.
Yeah.
But when it came with the UFOs, man, I've always listened to, believed in what something Carl Sagan said, the astronomer Carl Sagan. He said, if with so many billions of stars, and there have to be billions and trillions of planets out there in the universe, if we are the only intelligent life, what a waste of space.
Good point.
Now,
yeah.
He credited that to somebody else. I don't remember the first guy who said it, but
right.
I heard Sagan say it. But absolutely. So I've always felt, it's got to be something out there. And seeing that, I'm like, okay, that could be one of ours that I just don't know about yet.
Right,
but,
right.
It was pretty cool.
Man, that's amazing. And what part of Missouri did you grow up in? Not that I know the state too well, but just curious.
It's a little town called Orick, about 800 people. And again, I was out in the country. It's about 30 miles due east of Kansas City.
Oh, okay. So it's, not far from where I am. I'm in Omaha, so 2.5 hours-ish probably?
Yeah, 3. It's 3 to Omaha.
Okay.
And yeah, trust me, when we wanted to see a good zoo, that's where we went.
Yeah, we are famous for our zoo, my friends.
Yep.
Yeah, it is solid. It is solid. Well,
I was in Omaha 2 weeks ago. I should have thought to get a hold of you,
buddy. Next time you're here, get a hold of me. I will take you out for the best lunch that money can buy, because I know where the hidden gems are.
Man, and that's what. Whenever I go somewhere, that's what I want.
Me too.
I want a hidden gem. I want something not just hidden, but you don't even know if it's condemned or not.
That's exactly
where the best
right.
food is.
Well, I mean, I lived in LA for 20 years, and the thing is, like, in LA, it's an amazing food city. It's like it's fine for fine dining, but all the great food in LA is working class food. A curry for $8 in Thai town, and it's the same way in Omaha. Like there is the best restaurants are hole in the walls.
That is amazing. The prices in I didn't have to buy too much. I was Ancient Aliens flew me out a couple of years ago to be on an episode, and while I was out there, I'm like, I've never been to LA. Yeah. I have never had an In-N-Out burger.
Oh yeah,
and the whole meal, because I've got the fries and a burger,
sure.
Animal style.
You got to,
and a soda, and it was cheap.
Yeah. No, they have not raised their prices. It's like it's the best deal for fast food ever, because like I went to Wendy's like a few months ago. Like I was driving and I was starving, and I got like a burger and a soda, and it was like almost $9. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. No, that's not worth it. And the thing is, the In-N-Out burger, for those of you out there who've never had one, it would be worth paying more.
It would.
They're that good.
They're very good. It's one of the few things in this world that lives up to the hype.
Mm-hmm.
It is tasty. Well, Jason, if you don't mind, I plucked out some stories and chapters from What Lurks Beyond. I know you probably wrote it a long time ago, so you may not remember all of them, but like...
Right. Just going to say, the book came out in 2009, so I would have written it in 2008.
Right. Well, dig deep back into the recesses of your frontal lobe, my friend, because I'm going to ask you about... Well, okay, so... The chapter is called Something Fell from the Sky, Skidmore, Missouri. First off, I just want to say I've been fascinated by Skidmore because of the whole story with the
Ken Rex McElroy, the town
Ken
bully.
Rex McElroy. Yeah, maybe we should just talk about that really quick because it's such an amazing story.
Well, yeah, Ken Rex was I think he dropped out of school at some point, but he was a bully. First, in Northwest Missouri, the town of Skidmore right now is probably 200 people.
Right.
I'm not sure what it was back in the 70s during his heyday, but he was terrifying. He terrorized the entire county or the entire region. People were so afraid of him. He would drive in the daylight, did pure daylight, up to somebody's hog lot and steal their pigs while the farmer was watching, and the farmer was too scared to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So he stole. He had a lot of women. One of them was a 15-year-old girl that he would wait. He'd pick her up from school, and eventually she moved in with him and his wife.
Gross.
And the wife was too scared to say anything about it. But eventually everybody got tired of it. The police wouldn't do anything. In doing this story, this chapter, the guy, well, I'll talk about that when I get to it. But he did a lot of things that people really don't know about. A lot of horrible things. But the townsfolk got tired of it, got tired of the police not doing anything about him. So one day they were all waiting for him, and he went to the town bar. And wow, the whole town's in here. Seemed like it. And he bought a beer and a 6-pack to go. And when he walked outside, people followed him. Everybody followed him. And a bunch of people with guns just unloaded on him, murdered him in his truck. His wife was in the truck and she didn't get touched, but of course that had to have been horrible. And the FBI came down to investigate it, and nobody confessed. It's an unsolved murder because nobody was going to turn in the person who shot the first shot that got rid of their monster.
Right. And I don't know if you're aware of this, Jason. I'll send you a link later today if you haven't seen it. I can't remember what network did, but they did a 4-part docuseries on this. But they kind of focused, which was super interesting, on the aftermath from the moment they killed Ken Rex to the current day, and how it was almost the loss of innocence for this town. And the town after that, you would think like, oh, we got rid of the bully, everything's great again. It actually got worse.
Well,
which is interesting. Like,
I mean, so many nationwide, the nation's eyes were on Skidmore.
Yeah,
it was under a lot of scrutiny, but it's weird. A town that small in the middle of, it's 14 miles, I think, away from where I'm sitting right now.
Right.
But in the early 2000s, I think it was, an 18 or 19-year-old boy named Branson Perry from Skidmore told his mom, I'm going out to the garage to get something, and he's never been seen or heard from since.
Yep.
And about 15 plus years ago, she just graduated from high school last year, but an 18-year-old woman who was 8 months pregnant made friends with a woman from somewhere in Kansas about dogs. They liked the same breed of dog. Well, the woman in Kansas came over to Skidmore to meet her and ended up killing her by cutting the baby out and taking it home and telling everybody it was hers.
What the hell?
Okay, so yeah, the 18-year-old Bobby Jo Stinnett was her name. I don't remember the name of the murderer, but yeah, she got caught really quickly, and the baby was brought back to family. And like I said, she just graduated high school a year or two ago.
I mean,
why is all that stuff in this little bitty town?
Right. Well, it's one of these. Oh boy, Jason. I mean, like it's weird because I have found that in Nebraska there is this county called Richardson County, which basically is you could throw a softball to the Missouri-Kansas border. It's like here's Mound City, Missouri, here's Nebraska, and here's Kansas. It's kind of like the little like corner piece.
Okay, I know exactly where that spot is.
Yeah, right. Well, there's I'm sure you know about the Rulo, Nebraska doomsday cult, the Yahweh cult. In the early 80s, it was like a posse coma. It's a long story. I've talked about it on the.
I will look that up because cults fascinate me.
This is insane. But like in this little tiny region, and the whole county is like maybe under 8,000 people. there has been the most heinous true crime in the history of Nebraska happen in this little tiny region.
Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm like, why this area? Like, why? Like, there's no one here. Like, but this crazy stuff keeps happening.
Well, I mean, I've been flirting with the idea of writing a book about just this Northwest area, just this county and maybe a little bit outside, because we've got all those things in Skidmore.
Yeah.
In where I live, Maryville, Missouri, there was a murder back in the might have been 1930s, somewhere around there. A black man who he was a handyman. He could fix anything. And the townspeople thought that he was having an affair with the schoolmistress, the school teacher. And even though that wasn't happening, or didn't happen, it didn't stop them from forming a mob, tying him to the roof of the school and setting it on fire.
Good God, what?
So there was that. There were a couple of more incidents outside of town, but there were a couple in nearby Conception Junction, Missouri. There is an abbey out there, a Benedictine. I think it's Benedictine. Yeah, I think it's a Benedictine abbey. In late 90s, a guy from down around Kansas City decided he was mad at Catholics and drove all the way up here to this town of not that many people and killed a monk and shot a couple of other ones.
Good God.
I mean, just because he was mad at Catholics. I mean, that was crazy. But 30 years before that, in the early 70s, there's a guy, and he's still alive, still in jail. He was 14 at the time, named Benedict Kemper. And he was kind of a weird kid, didn't have any friends. He had a crush, though, on this girl who lived across the farm field.
Right.
And she didn't want to have anything to do with him. Her older brother threatened to kick his butt. And then one day, they all left. And Benny Kemper went and hid in their house. He cut the phone line first, but then he went and hid in their house. Waited for them all to come home and go to sleep, and then he murdered them all.
Oh, my Lord.
And then went home.
What?
And the next day, on the school bus, they stopped at the house. And the bus driver honked, and he said, "I don't think they're going to come to school today." And then at school, about 5-6 hours later, he got arrested.
Jesus.
And it's absolutely insane that all this stuff has happened in this nice, peaceful, absolutely beautiful corner of Missouri.
Right. Well, there's a Twin Peaks vibe happening there, man.
Oh,
Where on the outside, everything is golly shucks great, and if you peel the layer back just a little bit, yeah. Well, I mean, I often tell people, like, there's a reason why, like, when you hear high strange stories that take place in the Midwest, they scare me more than other ones. I don't know. There's something about the rural Midwest that is equal parts just beautiful to me, but also absolutely terrifying. And it might be the juxtaposition of those strong emotions that, like, makes it so powerful for me. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, in a city, New York, LA, whatever, we've got all these people all packed in together. And yes, something's bound to happen. But out here in the Midwest, nothing's so big and everybody's friendly. We all wave.
Right.
Midwestern wave.
Yeah, the finger wave. That's right.
Finger wave. And then when something horrible happens, it really hits harder.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's well. So back to sorry, no. I wanted to talk about Kenrick's McElroy just because I was like, when I saw Skidmore, I'm like, oh my God, we have to bring that up too because it's such a crazy event. But what was the something that fell from the sky in Skidmore, Missouri?
I have no idea. And neither does anybody else.
Right.
All right, but here's what happened. A year before McElroy got killed, this was 1979. A couple of young teens, like I think they were 14 and 15. They were brothers they were walking bean fields. So soybean fields, farmers hired teenage kids, give them either a hoe or a machete, and they walk the fields and they cut weeds out. And that's what they were doing. And it was just outside of town. And he was walking, and all of a sudden he finds a crater. And it is about, 15 feet around, and an area on one side and the other side, he said they looked like scorch marks. So what it looked like was something came in, scorched the soybeans, impacted, and then skipped like a stone on a pond, and just went out. And he said it was really bizarre because at the bottom of the crater there were a bunch of holes that were about as big around as a pencil. Whoa. And there was like a grayish blue powder that was scattered on the bottom of the hole as well. So I mean, he went and told the farmer he was working for, and the farmer called the university. And a scientist came out and looked at it, and he's like, I don't know what this is. They called the police. The police came. This is a flight corridor, this area. So the FAA came out to take a look. Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska came down and looked. For weeks, they had news crews out here from all over the place. There were UFO enthusiasts from all over the country who came to Skidmore to look at this crater. And then finally, everybody dispersed, but they couldn't find whatever it was. If it hit and skipped out, they couldn't find where it landed.
Right.
The scientist who took the samples, his name was still in the telephone book when I was researching this. So I called his number, and his wife picked up the phone, and he died a couple years ago.
Oh.
So I felt terrible.
Yeah.
But so he was never able, apparently, to determine what it was. Neither was the Air Force, and the FAA said nothing fell off a plane, to cause this. So it was a mystery. The fun part was near the end of the summer, the soybeans within about a 10, 15-foot radius of the crater were almost twice as tall as the rest of the field.
What?
And they had no weeds in that bit of soybeans.
Shut the front door.
Yeah.
That's legitimately wild, though.
It sure is. And here's a couple more things about this. I sent a Freedom of Information Act request to the FAA, and they got back with me immediately. But I sent it to Offutt Air Force Base, and they rejected it. Well, I sent another. I reworded it and sent it, and they rejected it. But there was a phone number on it, on the rejection stamp. So I called, and the person who rejected it said, we have those files you're looking for. You just didn't word it the right way. I'm like, okay, great. Would you tell me the right way to word it? No, I can't do that.
What?
And then hung up.
What?
And just a couple of years ago, I'm like, damn it, I'm not going to put up with this.
Yeah.
Because I've been teaching FOAI requests in my journalism classes. I'm like, no, so I sent another letter, and I did it right this time. And conveniently, those records have been lost in a flood.
Oh, God. The old flood excuse.
Yep. Now, admittedly, in Nebraska, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was some terrible flooding.
Right.
I think it was 2019 is when it happened.
Yeah.
But, it's a convenient excuse that is overused by the government.
And also, it's like, you have important documents. What are you just going to, put it in some, floodplain field? I imagine they have ways of securing things that are important.
They put all the records in old Martini and Rossi Asti Spumani boxes and store it in a cellar. That's what
I guess. God, our taxpaying dollars are going to poor storage of records, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
amazing.
Here's another interesting part about this is the man who I met. I looked him up and contacted him, and he came and got me in Maryville, and I rode out there in his pickup with him. He's a farmer in another part of the county now, but he told me all this stuff. He showed me the crater. I took a picture of him next to it, and when we got back in the car after the interview, we were driving by Skidmore, and he goes, what do you know about Skidmore? And I go, well, just about Ken Rex McElroy. And he goes, that was my uncle.
Whoa.
And immediately I'm like, uh-oh. And he said, don't worry. He needed to be put down. I'm like,
yeah.
Sounds good. But he also told me that a couple of stories. One was how afraid the police were.
Right.
McElroy was taking this guy I interviewed and a friend down to St. Joseph to go bowling.
Right.
And on the way back to Maryville, or to Skidmore, but anyway, it's close enough. On the way back, McElroy was speeding and got pulled over by a county deputy. And the deputy walked up to the window of the car, looked in, saw who it was, and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. McElroy, please continue." And he got back in his car, turned the lights off, and he was gone.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in that documentary, you know, the citizens, like multiple, they even, like, I think a few of them, like, hired an attorney to go to, like, Kansas City or to some bigger town to file, like, a complaint with, like, the state government. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do anything about it. Like, they tried every legitimate, like, way to, you know, stop, because he was committing open crimes. I mean, he would, like, sick his Doberman pinchers on handicapped people. Like, I mean, like, he's the worst person
nice
ever.
Guy.
Worst person ever, yeah.
If somebody made him mad, he would terrorize them by circling their house all day and occasionally shooting a gun in the air.
Cool. That sounds like fun. My God.
It's kind of interesting because about anybody up here of a certain age, I can mention McElroy and they have a story.
Yeah.
Even my wife's great uncle lived about an hour drive away from here. He was on a jury when McElroy was up on murder charges. Because that's what finally pushed people over the edge. Is his daughter was in the town grocery store in Skidmore, and the owner saw her stealing a piece of candy, and he called her on it.
Yeah.
And McElroy came to the store, waited for him to come out, you know, the back loading dock, and shot him with a shotgun.
Yeah, it was like an elderly man too.
He was an elderly man. Didn't kill him.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, the other story that the nephew had was that he went coon hunting with his uncle and a couple other guys, and the farmer ran them off. And he said, "I can't prove this 100%, but the farmer a week later died of a gunshot wound." He said, "I could bet anything it was Ken Rex."
Yeah, do the math on that one.
Yeah.
Good Lord. What? Well, you know, I mean, not that I'm the arbiter of what should happen to people, but it seems like the justice was potentially served. Although the fallout of the poor town after watching this documentary, I'm like, it might have been like a temporary solution to a bigger problem. It's sad what happened. But Jason, we're going to move on to something a little lighter, and that is the chapter entitled "Mike Markham's Time Machine." And first off, I'm assuming, I don't remember what Madman Markham was from Art Bell's show, but I remember Art Bell referring to Madman Markham. Is this Mike Markham, Madman Markham? Oh my God, really?
Yes.
Amazing. Tell us about this.
All right. So I'd listened to Art Bell for even back in the 90s. I was listening to him. And I remember a couple of times hearing Mike Madman Markham.
Right.
Right. He claimed to have invented a time machine.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, there was I'll tell the story, but I was familiar with the story. But when I moved up here one night, I was listening, and they had a replay of one of Art's shows, and I'm like, yeah, I remember this. And they said where he was from, Stanberry, Missouri, and I'm like, whoa, that's 27 miles away from where I'm sitting right now.
Yes.
So I went and dug into it. What the story is, Mike Markham, he was a year or two into electronics school, and a girl he was seeing moved to this area, to this region, and he moved with her. And he got a house in a small town. It's about 1,700 people, called Stanberry, Missouri. And he one day because the girl dumped him once he moved here. So,
oh man,
it's a lesson to y'all. It's a lesson to everybody.
That's what turned him into a madman, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. He decided to build a Jacob's ladder on his kitchen table. And for those of you don't know what a Jacob's ladder is, you got a base and you got wires like this, and you run electricity through them, and they go zzz. And when the charge isn't enough to hold, it zaps out at the top. Okay, so he built one of those. They were part of Dr. Frankenstein's equipment, if you guys ever watched that. But anyway, he was he saw a heat signature that was above the Jacob's ladder, and he knew it shouldn't have been there. And of course, he did what any guy does. He threw something at it because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, he threw a finishing screw. It hit the heat signature, and then it disappeared. And a few seconds later, it landed on the other end of the table. And he made the jump to, hey, I just invented a time machine. Right? And so he decided he wanted to build a man-sized one so he could go into the future. And this wasn't to increase the body of knowledge. He wasn't contributing to science. He wanted to go 3 days in the future and get the lottery numbers. I mean, how much more American?
I can appreciate the honesty. Yeah.
That's about as American as you can get.
Exactly.
Anyway, so he built one that was about 5 feet tall, but the voltage in a house isn't enough to power it. So he got a couple of guys and paid them, and they stole a few power line transformers from St. Joe Power and Light, and he rewired it. He wired it backwards, which would give you even more power. And he got caught because when he flipped the switch on, the power in the town went out.
Oh God!
And they finally found which house it was and arrested him. I spoke with a person who worked for the power company at the time, who went into Markham's house and saw the machine. I interviewed the arresting officer, and he said something that stuck with me. He goes, what he said? He was building a time machine. I don't know if he really was, but he sure thought he was. So Markham spent some time in jail and then when he got out, he moved to St. Joseph, Missouri, which is nearby. It's a city of about 78,000 people. And by this time, people had heard him on Art's show and started sending him money and electronic equipment.
Wow.
So he started working on a machine, and his landlord in his apartment building kicked him out because there was a rumor going around town that he was throwing cats through it.
Oh my God.
And a direct quote from Mike Markham in the St. Joseph newspaper, he said, "That cat thing, it just ain't true."
Good, thank God.
Yeah. And he eventually went down to Kansas City because he got enough donations to rent a warehouse. And he rebuilt his machine bigger. And the last time he was on Art Bell, which was 95 or 97, I can't remember, he said, "I'm going to jump in it." And then he vanished. Seriously vanished. I talked to some people from St. Joseph who had befriended him when he moved down there. And yeah, Mike used to come over for dinner. We used to go out for hamburgers.
What?
And, used to send, we used to, Christmas presents, and then zap, he was gone. Didn't say a word, haven't heard from him. I finally was able to track down somebody who knew him back home in Cincinnati, where he was from.
Right.
And I actually got to talk to Mike.
Really?
Yeah. And this has been 10 years or so ago. And he didn't want to have anything to do with time travel anymore.
Right.
What he said happened was when he jumped in, okay, first, he'd experimented by throwing grapefruit into the machine, and they would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And he would find them out in the parking lot.
What?
Now, anyone who's into time travel, Back to the Future would not have worked like it did.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are not just traveling in time, you're not traveling anywhere else, just in time. You're staying in the exact same place when you travel. So if you're traveling, 5 years in the future, where is the Earth going to be?
Right.
Where's the sun going to be? You're going to be out nowhere, in the middle of space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So just he threw it in and zap, it was gone. And the Earth had turned just enough that it landed out in the parking lot. And he threw he got a couple of guinea pigs and he threw them in.
Really?
Same thing, except for they were dead. And he figured maybe they're too small, their systems can't handle it. I'm bigger, I'm going to do it. And he jumped. And then everything went black and he woke up and he was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, and he was in a farm field and there was snow on the ground. He didn't remember who he was. He probably peed his pants, but I didn't ask him that question.
Yeah.
I know I probably would have.
Yeah, things would evacuate.
He was taken to a homeless shelter, and eventually he started remembering bits and pieces. And at one point when he got his life back together and started working and got enough money to travel, he came back to Kansas City to look for the warehouse, because he had notes, he had videos, all his equipment was there. But when he got it, somebody else had bought it, and all of his stuff went in the trash. And so right now he's just working. And I wrote an article about this, about Finding Mike, and it was in Nexus magazine. And I got contacted by so many people they wanted to talk to him. They wanted to send him money. They wanted to send him more equipment. And I got a hold of him again. I said, "Do you want to talk to these people?" And he's like, "I don't want anything to do with it."
Wow.
The one person I did put him in contact with, I got a Facebook message from Art Bell. He's like, "Wait a second.
No way.
I know. Blew my mind."
Oh my God. It's amazing.
I've been on Coast to Coast 4 times now, and only Art was alive the first time that I was on it.
Right. Good.
And it wasn't him. It was Ian Punnett. I mean, Ian did a fine job, but
Ian is good. But I mean, Art Bell
he's the man. He was the master.
He really was. He really was.
But anyway, so Art had him on. I think Midnight in the Desert was his next show. But as for talking to Mike, I haven't done that in, like I said, about over 10 years.
Right. And at a certain point, if he doesn't want to be, maybe he just wants to start a new life and forget, and move on from that.
He's not the type of guy who's a publicity hound, so he wants to be left alone. I get that.
Yeah. That is so wild. That is such a crazy story. So he, after he, found himself in the middle of a cornfield where it was snowing, and but did he tell you he believes he traveled in time?
Oh, because I left this part out. Yes, it was 2 years in the future.
It was.
Yeah.
So he believes he did travel in time.
Yes.
Amazing.
He also said, he said the good thing was that he's 2 years younger than what it says on his driver's license.
Incredible. Oh my God. Maybe one day a follow-up will emerge, but that is such a great 90s early aughts story. I love it. It's wonderful. It kind of gives me that John Teeter, Mel's Hole vibes,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which are both, classic Art Bell stories. Love them.
So good. So good. Okay, well, I'd like to move on, if that's okay, to the chapter called Big Monkey in My Backyard in St. Joseph, Missouri. All
right. So here's something, and I wrote a book in 2000. It came out in 2019 called Chasing American Monsters, where each state looked into what monsters, the big monsters in the state, and maybe some of the obscure ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I did all 50, and what I found out was Bigfoot sightings have been in 49 states, everything but Hawaii.
Right.
And when you think of St. Joseph, Missouri, you don't think Bigfoot, but one of the things about Bigfoot is a lot of reports are along waterways.
Yeah.
And Bigfoot researchers think that's how they travel, by waterways,
right. Because that's where the game is. Yeah,
right. Exactly. So the Missouri River goes right by, I think, within a half mile of a park called Krug Park.
Uh-huh.
And the park's gorgeous. But I was interviewing a man who was elderly now, and it was fun because he was hard of hearing.
Yeah,
but I'm not making fun of him. I'm starting to think that myself.
It's happening to me. Yeah.
Yeah. But when he was a teenager, there were reports of people seeing a Bigfoot in Krug Park. And he and a couple of his football playing buddies were like, "No, it can't be. Bigfoot doesn't exist. They're probably somebody in some suit scaring teenagers out there who are just wanting to make out."
What do you remember the time frame of this? Like what year?
It was in
around, at least
67, maybe.
Okay, all right. Same year as Paris and Gimlin, Summer of Love. Sure.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And they were like, let's go out to the park, and whoever's scaring teenagers, we're going to put a scare into them. So they went
Mm-hmm.
out there, and were wandering around. Two of them split up, and the man I interviewed was down at the bottom of this hill, and he saw somebody walking at the top of the hill, and he's like, "Oh, that's got to be my buddy." So he yelled at him, and his buddy yelled from over here. He's like, "Wait a second, that's not him." But the thing that, or the whatever the being was that he yelled at, turned around and walked away. And they're like, "Okay, they left," and they went back the next morning. It had rained recently, so the ground was soft, and they found like, huge footprints, bare footprints up there. And there were, other reports from that time in the park, but he was, certain that he saw a Bigfoot that night.
Man, that's incredible. I love it. Well, the thing is, it's weird because, you would think like a state like Nebraska, for example. Now, there's like a handful of documented cases, I think like 15 on the BFRO. But when you do some digging like I have, there are so many Bigfoot reports, including like in the last year, we've had two that are actually pretty close. One was on the outskirts of Omaha, Lawrence Gardens, the Botanical Gardens. 4 people saw this
That
thing.
place is beautiful. Are you kidding? There's a Bigfoot
right
out there and I missed it.
I know. Well, and that is right along the Missouri River. So basically, like where all the, not just Bigfoot, but where most of the big weird stuff is reported is on the eastern side of Nebraska, right along the Missouri River. Mm-hmm. It seems like that is the nexus of the weird for this state.
Well, there was go across the river in Council Bluffs. There was a famous UFO encounter.
We're gonna get to that. Not yet. I love that story. Oh, Big Lake Park. No. You wrote a beautiful chapter about that. We are getting to that. Okay. Well, I want to move to.
Wait. First, I wrote in the follow up to Chasing American Monsters is Chasing North American Monsters, and I investigated. I did research from the Arctic Circle all the way down to Panama. So I've got monsters all the way through there. And one of the stories is from a small town in Nebraska. I can't remember the name of it. It starts with a C, but it was during the 1970s. Tons of people saw this. It was killing a young farmer's chickens. And is there a California, Nebraska? I'm trying to think.
Not that I'm aware of. I'm trying to think of a C. Chadron?
I don't think so. It's south of Omaha somewhere.
South of Omaha. It begins with a C. I'm drawing a blank here. But
yeah, same here. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, it was a really, what I liked about it is a bunch of different people saw it.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I try and give them a little bit more credence.
Right. Ooh, I need to find out what that case is. Ooh, I don't know if I have that one. That's good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to buy that book immediately.
It comes out in September.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm writing that down right now. I'm gonna pre-order that little baby. My friend, can you please tell us about Ridgely Cemetery in Helltown?
Okay, there's a small, it was a small town. It's not there anymore. But it got the nickname, it got the moniker Helltown back in the day because back in the 1800s, early 1900s, it was the place to go for bars and hookers in the area. And that's why it got the name Helltown. But eventually the town dried up and disappeared, but there's still a cemetery out there, and it's supposedly extremely haunted. And I talked with a couple of people who have gone out there, and they've seen a white woman in white apparition. Those
classic.
Are fairly common.
Yeah.
But the one I really liked is, and I'm pulling this from a long memory here, so if I'm not getting the details 100% right, that's because I wrote it in 2008. But they went out one night and it got really quiet and their car started malfunctioning. And then they saw a spirit, and they were hearing things, and eventually they were able to get the car started and the windows rolled up and they tore out of there. But theirs isn't, the only story. A lot of people have gone out there at night just to see, what happens, and
Sure.
something fairly terrifying generally does.
Wow. That's amazing. And where is that located? And like in terms of like, I guess, geography, like, is it like close to you?
It's within 100 miles.
Okay. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think
Wow.
it's like southeast, maybe around between maybe St. Joe, between it and Kansas City somewhere.
Okay. Not that far though.
No, not
Interesting.
that
I would
far.
love to visit that place. Um, Here is now, God, see, one thing I love about this book, not the one thing, there's many things I love about it, but the diversity of weird stuff you have in here is
Yeah.
fantastic. And this is a great example. So this chapter is entitled An Encounter with a Black-Eyed Kid in Lawson, Missouri.
Right. If I'm remembering this one right, and I think I am, and this bothers me because back in my early 20s, I lived in Lawson for about a year, and I'm like, wow, that's hopefully the closest I ever get to black-eyed kid. Yeah. I wrote a whole lot about black-eyed kids back when the phenomena, first got big, and I was going to write a book on it. And my wife's like, I'm not scared of any of the things you write about,
right?
Except these.
Yeah.
So if you write this book and they come knocking on our door, it's your ass, mister. So I picked my battles and didn't write it. So I was really, really happy that David Weatherly wrote one because I didn't have to anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, the one in Lawson, a woman was home with her children. She had 2 young children. One was an infant. One, I think maybe it might have been 2 years old or a little bit older. I can't remember. But she was home with them and her husband was at work. And she got a knock on the door. And there were a couple of kids. And it's black-eyed kid stories are almost all the same in the respect that they're children from, I don't know, 6 to 18 or 19, usually about between like 14 and 16. These were, if I remember, more like 10 or 12. And they come and they ask either to be let into a car, let into a house, take me someplace. They want to be alone with the person they're talking to. And the person, the intended victim, I'm assuming, they want to help immediately, which is why I think they come looking like kids, because who doesn't want to help a kid if they're in trouble?
Right.
And then they realize something's off. They're dressed strangely. Their breath smells horrible. Their hair's probably greasy. And then they notice, and they also always talk much more mature than a kid should. And then they notice their eyes are black, completely black, like a doll's eyes.
Man, sorry, terrifying.
I was channeling Jaws.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so she saw the black eyes, and immediately terrified, slammed the door, locked it, and she sat on the couch with her daughter, and they started tapping on the window.
Oh, no.
And calling for her to open the door and using her name, which she didn't tell them. And she was absolutely terrified. And then she realized that her other kid being upstairs alone, asleep, was close to where the back door was in the kitchen, which was open. It was during the summer, so just the screen door was there. So she bolted to the back door and locked it and called her husband. And by the time her husband got home, they were gone. But that just seems to be a horrifying experience.
It is. How did you find this story?
Well, I wrote and it's how I got the idea for this book, What Lurks Beyond. For 4.5 years, I wrote a newspaper column about paranormal occurrences called From the Shadows.
Right.
And I noticed a lot of people I talked to, a lot of people who contacted me were from my general area. And that's how she saw my story, I think, in the newspaper and got a hold of me. So I interviewed her that way. But yeah, that's how the book came about. I'm like, wow, all this stuff, I'm going to put a pin in a map.
Right.
And, measure out what 100 miles would be, put a pencil on the end, and do a circle. And yeah, that's how it happened from the column.
Phenomenal. I bet you got so many great stories from that column.
I just went through it because I was looking I'm writing a new monster book called Chasing the World's Monsters, where I'm going all over the planet. And I remembered there was a Madagascar monster that I interviewed a person who had investigated it, and I was looking for it because it was in that column. So I was going through all the columns trying to find it, and I'm like, wow, that's a good story. Yeah, that's a good story.
I'm sure. If you ever have any Nebraska ones, you want to get rid of, toss them my way. I'll go check it out.
A former student of mine named Michaela. She lived in a old two-story house. Grew up in Seward, Nebraska.
Oh, sure.
And something in the house, a ghost, some spirit in the house, didn't like her Beanie Babies, because in her room there was a shelf near the top of the wall that ran around the entire house, and ran around the entire room, and she collected Beanie Babies, and they were always on the floor. Whoa. She would see them sometimes falling to the floor, not just falling, but being thrown across the room. But she said she'd come home from school and all her Beanie Babies would be on the floor.
Whoa. Man, well, don't buy Beanie Babies, folks.
Don't buy Beanie Babies.
Yeah. Okay,
Beanie Babies wants to sponsor High Strangeness.
Right, that's exactly.
Please do.
We are open to sponsorships and blank checks. Yes, most definitely. Tell me about the chapter called Ouija Boards in Independent Kansas.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna have to give me more. What?
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to put a pin in that one. We'll maybe come back to it, because I want to make sure we talk about Council Bluffs, Iowa. So I think we can kind of maybe wrap because there is the Black Angel of Death Cemetery in Council Bluffs.
Right.
But the interesting thing about this area is, so you have on top of this hill is the Black Angel of Death. Then about 2 blocks away is the Squirrel Cage jail, which is probably considered the most haunted dwelling in the kind of like the metro area of Omaha and Council Bluffs. Then right over the hill, literally from the top of the hill, the Angel of Death, you can basically see Big Lake Park, where the UFO incident happened. So in this tiny little like mile area, some of the 3 of the weirdest things.
It's really, really cool. And the if I may touch on the Black Angel statue, because
please.
I did that. I went there, when I was doing Big Lake Park, researching that, and I went to find it. And what I did first is I went into a cemetery. Because I didn't know where it was at first, and I went into the cemetery. And what I found out about the cemetery, it was a Native American, graveyard at one point, and they, disinterred bodies, and all the horrible things that our ancestors did. But anyway, it's got that going for it. And I drove in, and it was summer. I had my window down, and there was this huge black dog, walking toward me on this road, and there was foam coming out of its mouth. I'm like, holy crap, black dog. Rolled up my window, kept driving, and then I started seeing all these black squirrels. I didn't know black squirrels were a thing. They are. Council Bluffs known for them.
They are. I have them in my backyard all the time.
Yeah, we've started to get them down here. Global warming's making things travel. But I didn't know there was. So I saw the black dog with the foam. I saw all these black squirrels, and I'm there to see a black angel. I'm like, what's going on?
Get out of here.
The Black Angel statue was a memorial for Dodge. Was he a colonel or a general?
Exactly. He was a general. Yep.
He was a General Dodge, who was really instrumental in the Intercontinental Railroad being built. He was great friends with a sculptor who sculpted the Lincoln statue in the Lincoln Memorial. Mm-hmm. And that's the same sculptor who made the statue. And so it's got historic value, but it's black. And the legend is at night it gets up and moves. And I talked to somebody who swears to God that he went out there in high school with some friends, and the Black Angel statue took its head off and rolled it at them like a bowling ball.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, there has been, a lot of like orbs of light. There's been a lot of like weird reports, not just even like the flying statue, but like a lot of people have, not myself, but have, reported things over the years. And it may be one of those, like, high school folkloric things, but, like, still, it's weird. And a lot of weird stuff has happened in this exact area.
Right.
And it's very odd.
And the Squirrel Cage Jail is, it's, if folks go look at it online, I mean, there's plenty of posts about it because it's supposed to be really haunted.
Right. I took my cousins, and my cousin married this guy, and he's on like a paranormal investigating team. So we went and did the tour, and he had all his investigation gear. And he said, he was absolutely thrilled because he was like, this is some of the most activity I've ever picked up. Now, I personally don't know of how much like stock I put into these like technological devices for indicating paranormal activity, but he was off the charts thrilled. He couldn't stop talking about it. But it is a really like terrifying place to go. Like if you're ever in Omaha, it's and you're into this stuff, I would recommend taking the tour.
And close by is a train museum, which is really nice. So go there.
It is.
About the electronic devices, this really bothers me because this meter picks up ghost activity.
Yeah.
What scientist told you that?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's building these things? All right.
Yeah.
EVPs, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I thought the Frank's box, the spirit box, I thought those were BS until we were using one in the Villisca Axe Murder House and it started talking to us.
Right.
So some stuff, some electronic equipment I'm okay with, but meters to detect ghosts, it's hooey.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, like, I think interesting things can happen with them. Almost like, but I think you could get like the same results with like a tarot deck, or I don't think, like, I'm not sure what it's proof of, I guess is what I'm saying. Granted, I've been given some, like someone gave me a spirit box, a friend of mine, and I've tried to use it. I don't understand the technology because I'm a dumb old person, so I can't even get anything to work. So
well, what it does is it scans the static on the FM dial.
Yeah.
And we were in the Villisca Axe Murder House, and I took a class there.
Mm-hmm.
And one kid
at the Axe Murder House.
Yes, and my class was called Paranormal Journalism.
Oh, okay. You took your class. I thought you meant like you took a class, like, no, it was a continuing education, algebra.
No. Every 4 or 5 years I teach a class called Paranormal Journalism to help a young journalist treat these subjects seriously,
right?
And never bring up the X-Files or Ghostbusters in an article. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were there, and this kid named Stratton, that was his first name. I said, "Don't be like Zach Baggins."
Mm-hmm.
All right. He goes, "Oh, I'm going to be like Zach Baggins. I'm going to yell at the ghosts." Yeah. So he did for a while, and then he finally shut up. But when we were using the spirit box, the guy who brought it was like, "Okay, is there anybody in the room with us?" And it was static, and a male voice said, "Yes."
Whoa.
And he started asking questions, and it was giving yes or no answers. And I'm like, you know what? You can pick a yes or no out of the ether. I'm not impressed.
Right.
And then he asked, "Are you upset that we're here?" Shh. Yes. "Well, who are you upset with?" Shh. Stratton.
Whoa.
At that point, we turned the box off.
Yeah. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, we're fine.
That's crazy. Okay, see, I would like to experience that. That's good. Yeah. Hey, so I want to make sure we give a little time to the Big Lake Park incident.
Yes. Okay.
First up, I want to tell you this. So George Norrie came out with a documentary series last year about UFOs, of course. And they covered the Big Lake Park incident.
It wasn't George Norrie. It was George.
Oh, I'm sorry, George Knapp. George
Knapp.
Yeah, but the thing is, first off, they showed a sign that says Big Bear Lake Park, and they went to a fake location and pretended it was Big Lake Park. I'm like, dude, I've been there like 10 times. That is not the same place. And the sign even had couldn't even find the right sign. It said Big Bear Lake, and I'm like, that is so cheap. Like, to do that.
And you know who you saw on that show? I was on that show.
Yes, you were on that. Yes.
Yeah, we were in the Council Bluffs library looking at footage, or not footage, but old newspaper reports of the event. And
why didn't they go to the real place?
They were there then. Why the hell didn't they go to the park?
I'm so confused. Yeah, it's open, it's public. No, it's very easy to get to. I love it. I love it. But this is such a great case. So please tell us a little bit about this.
All right, this was back in the, I believe, early 70s. What was it, 73, 74, something like that?
I think so. Yeah.
Around, it was December. It was around Christmas. And I interviewed a guy who's all grown up and has been for quite a while, but he was in high school. He and his, or maybe early 20s, he and his girlfriend were driving around the park. And they stopped the car because they saw a ball. A white ball with a red line around, around the center, just hovering over the park. And they stopped and looked at it because they had no idea what it was. And then all of a sudden, a glob of something glowing fell out of the bottom of the craft, and they drove toward it. There were a couple of other people driving around the park, and they saw the same thing. They reported the same thing. But this kid was the son of the fire chief, or the assistant fire chief. And when he got to the area, it had already been reported, and his dad and the fire department was there. And he said that this is big pile of molten metal that was still so hot in the center. It was white and blue.
Wow.
It was that hot. When it finally cooled down, because again, it was December and snowy, it did. He took a couple of bits from it. They hauled it all away, but bits fell off, and people collected them. But yeah, it was seen by multiple witnesses. They had physical evidence, and some of the physical evidence was sent to Iowa State University to a lab there. And what the lab found, that it was smelter slag.
Yeah.
Which is whatever's left over after you take ore and get the mineral out of it you want. If you're getting, iron or whatever you're getting, the slag is what's left over. And there was a few explanations they tried to make about, it's probably smelter's slag that fell off a train from the nearby railroad tracks.
Right.
And the railroad tracks, I don't know, 100 yards away from where this landed.
Yeah.
How the hell do you get white hot slag? Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Valet went on length in one of his books to talk about because he actually did crunch some numbers. He's like, the only place that produced slag around this area was like 150 miles away. Then to transport slag is like super rare, and you have to have a special kind of lining, and he's like, it just seems impossible. That.
And then to dump it so far away anyway. Jacques Vallée, the book or paper that he came out with, it wasn't just Big Lake Park. That was just one bit. He had like 10 other identical occurrences around the world. And the conclusion that he came to is that, UFOs collected some raw material, took what they needed, and the slag was what was left over. They didn't even need it.
Right.
And what bothers me the most about that story is I found Jacques Vallée's email address. I contacted him. He didn't get back to me until about a year after the book was published. So I didn't even get to talk to him about it.
It would have been nice to have quotes from him.
Yeah.
Well, that is the slag that they're currently studying at the Stanford Research Center. Gary Nolan and Vallée, that is still to this day one of the most important pieces of metamaterial, whatever that is, that they're studying. So that slag is still in play.
That's great. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, as we talked about, earlier at the beginning of the show, man, there's something out there, and the chance of them visiting us, why not?
Right. Well, I mean, when the slag fell, it dropped on a levee that's no longer there, but it dropped on a levee and started like a little fire. There was a fire. There was so much physical evidence with this case, and there's a lot of different corroborating witnesses. So it's really one of the better cases in terms of physical evidence, witnesses. I mean, I think Eppley came and checked it out. They're like, yeah, there was not one of our planes, and I think even Offutt Air Force Base was like, yeah, that was not us. So. Not that you can trust everything they say.
Physical evidence, the eyewitness reports, man, this is a great case.
It really is. It really is. It's a classic. Staying on the UFO theme, there was a chapter called, and I did not get a chance to reread this one, so I can't remember exactly what it is either. Hopefully you can. It's called UFOs in Cowtown, USA, Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, yes. Wait a second, I'm trying to think. Because I had a couple of other Kansas City UFO stories. Are you talking about the one involving Roswell?
I don't think so, but if you have a Kansas City one off the top of your head, that'll work too.
Okay, well, I'll do a couple of quick ones. One of them is a former student of mine who I respect the hell out of, and we got along great. She's from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and she lives in Kansas City. And one time during her move, she was loading the last of her stuff on her car and was driving to Kansas City. And I-435 is a circle around Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas, and it's all the suburbs. And she was on it, and part of it is out, forest and field land. And her cat she had her cat with her, and it started going crazy. And she pulled over because she wanted to see what was wrong with the cat. But what she did see was over a field, black triangular craft with lights hovering.
Whoa.
Right over the treetops. She said there was one big one and a couple of smaller ones, and they were just hovering there. Ooh. And she looked at them for a while. She said other people behind her pulled over to look at them. And eventually she got kind of scared and left. And she said as soon as she got out of the vicinity, her cat calmed down. So she's pretty sure that's, the UFO she saw was because of that.
Yeesh. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. And, the thing about the black triangular craft, I went to college at the University of Central Missouri. It wasn't called that back in the time, during the Reagan administration.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We had the stealth bomber for a while.
Yeah.
The government hadn't told us about it yet.
Uh-huh.
I saw 60 Minutes on Sunday night about the stealth bomber, and I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. That next week, I drove to nearby Sedalia, Missouri. In between Warrensburg and Sedalia, Missouri, is Whiteman Air Force Base, where the B-2 is stationed.
Right.
And as I was driving on 50 highway, I pulled over because I saw a pencil line in the sky. I got out of my car and I watched, and the pencil line got bigger. I didn't hear a thing. And then finally it went overhead, and it looked like, the bat plane.
Whoa.
And if I had not seen that 60-minute special about the B-2 bomber, I would have thought the, Martians were here to get me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like that, in fact, she was like, I'm not saying it's a UFO.
Yeah.
It could be something, because there's a nearby Air Force base there. It could be ours, but still, it's a cool story.
It is.
Yeah. The other one, I got contacted by an elderly man. He was dying of cancer, and he goes, it's back when I was writing my column. He said, I have to get this off my chest. And he didn't want me to use his name. He was talking through,
the voice modulator.
He was talking through one of those, and because throat cancer. But anyway, he told me a story about when he was a kid, and his dad had been in the military, and his dad had a good friend who was in the military still, and the friend was coming in town on a bus and contacted the dad, and he was like, "Hey, meet at my hotel. It'd be good to get see you again." So in a hotel in downtown Kansas City, these two one ex and one still military man were just having a conversation, and the boy, weren't any TVs at the room because it was late 40s. He was just sitting there listening to them, and the dad said, "Is what happened in Roswell right? Did it happen?" Because the friend had been stationed at Roswell Army Air Force Base.
Right.
And all the guy said was, "Don't ever ask me that again." And the guy who was the kid said he was angry that dad had asked that question. So he interpreted that as, it did happen.
Something went down.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
Jason, first off, I want to thank you so much for your time. Do you have time for one more question?
Absolutely. Steve, let me tell you something.
Yeah,
I've been on a lot of interviews, and I gauge interviews, the success of interviews, is if I feel like I'm sitting here having a beer with a buddy.
Yes.
And that's exactly how I felt during this
Good. That makes me so happy because that is the vibe I try to create. I don't like to edit my show too much. I want all the little mistakes and pet visits and everything. Yeah, like give everyone the real experience, not a curated experience. So thank you.
If
That
this
means a lot.
interview would have been done, I don't know, about 5 hours later, I would have had something in this glass.
Yeah. Exactly. A little early now, although what does time even mean? I mean, if someone gave me a beer, I'd absolutely drink it. I would love it. So,
100%.
Sounds so good. Sounds so good. In fact, I'll have some tonight just for you. Jason, I have to ask you about Jim the Wonder Dog of Marshall, Missouri.
Yeah. There was I heard about this guy, about Jim, when I was a kid, because I would listen to a talk show out of Kansas City, a guy named Mike Murphy, who was a local legend. He would every once in a while have, I don't know, like he'd interview local politicians or local celebrities, but he'd also have like Leo Stringfield and Brad Steiger and people like that. He had Art Bell on right when Art's show was starting to take off. And he loved the story of Jim the Wonder Dog. So I got a taste of it when I was a kid. Jim was a English Llewellyn setter. A guy named Sam Van Arsdale owned a hotel called the Ruff Hotel, RUFF, which I find hilarious.
That's amazing.
He owned a dog, Yeah. But anyway, in Marshall, Missouri. And I got back into Jim because my wife that she's from Marshall, Missouri. They've got a nice little park there and a museum and a statue of Jim. But the story is, back in the 30s, a friend of Sam Van Arsdale's gave him this dog as a puppy. As a joke, Sam loved to hunt birds and, quail and pheasant and whatnot. And this was the run of the litter. So it was a joke.
Right.
Because it was the run, you don't want the run of the litter. But what Sam found was this dog could pick birds out of anywhere. And the dog, because of his, bird spotting ability, his pointing ability, was in a number of nature magazines and hunting magazines back in the time.
It's amazing.
But then he found out, because he would, talk to Jim like people do to their pets, and Jim would start doing what he told him. And eventually it got to the point to where he could write something on a piece of paper and hand it to Jim, or not hand it to him, but show it to him, and Jim would go do what he told him to.
What?
And the story got out, and people would, come from different places. And, I'm going to give Jim a command in German. And Jim would follow it, even though it was in German or French or Spanish. Somebody wrote a note in shorthand, and Jim followed the instructions.
What?
Van Arsdale was able. People met on a Saturday. They'd come to town, and they would meet at his hotel. It was a gathering spot. The lobby was, but more people would start coming just to see Jim. And he'd say, like, "Okay, Jim, pick out the man from Kansas City." And he'd go up to somebody, and the guy would be from Kansas City. People started using Jim. Who's going to win this presidential election? Right? Who, what sex is my baby going to be? And he was always right. And I interviewed a woman. She was extremely elderly, but she was a young girl back when Jim was around. And she had on a nice red dress with polka dots and a red bow in her hair. And she had a little purse, and she had 10 dimes in it. All right, she's really happy with these 10 dimes. And somebody didn't believe Jim could do what he could do. And Van Arsdale pointed at this little girl who was in a gaggle of little girls. And he said, "Go pick out the girl in the red dress." And Jim went, and there were like 3 girls in a red dress. And Jim was looking at them, and he turned back, like, "What the hell do you want me to do?" And he goes, "The red dress with the polka dots." So he went to the girl with the red dress and the polka dots. And the girl told me she was scared, not because of the dog, but because she'd have to give away her money.
Oh,
When I interviewed her, she brought her red dress that she was wearing that day with her.
wow.
I got a picture somewhere of her with that dress.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, when was this happening? What era?
The mid-30s. And
Mid-30s.
he, like I said, the word got out. He was featured in magazines. He was studied at the University of Missouri, which was nearby. They studied him, and they found out he was a normal, except his brain capacity was larger than a normal English Llewellyn setter.
Oh my God.
And he was even approached by Hollywood. Some studio wanted to buy Jim.
I'm not shocked.
And he didn't sell it. He didn't sell him because he just loved his dog, which I respect.
That is the most beautiful story.
I know, but Hollywood, I mean, how much training money would it save you if the dog could read the script, right?
Exactly. I mean,
but yeah,
a director's dream.
Yeah, if anybody goes to Marshall, Missouri, there's a water garden with a Jim statue. There's a museum right next to it, and he is buried in the town cemetery. Back when they buried him, you couldn't bury animals in the town cemetery, but since he was buried, the cemetery's grown around it.
No way.
But when I went to see his stone, people do what they do to stones. They put change on it for some reason.
Oh my God, that is a pilgrimage I'm absolutely going to make. I wonder how far that is from Omaha. What would you guess?
Well, from Maryville, where I am, I cheated.
Yeah.
It was just outside the 100-mile radius, but I had to include it because it was so cool.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's probably a 2-hour or more drive at least.
Not bad. Oh, when the weather's nicer. Hey, honey, guess we're going on vacation. Marshall, Missouri.
Probably 3, but 3's not that bad.
3's nothing. Yeah. It's a podcast and a half. Come on, it's easy. Jason, this has been so much fun. My last final question to you is, why is the Midwest so weird? I know you know. I know you know the answer. I know you know factually the answer.
Well, if you look on a map of states that drink the most, the Midwest has most of them.
We got a lot of people beat. That's for sure.
I know. Wisconsin's the king, but
of course, yeah.
We're no slackers.
No,
I don't know. What do you mean? Why is it so weird? I mean, I don't know if I believe in ley lines. Do they go through here?
I don't think so, and I don't really understand ley lines anyway. But I don't think they do.
No, me neither. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it is one of these things. It's like, to most people, it's the region of the United States with the most unremarkable geography. We're flyover states. So maybe there's a liminality between the Midwest where, people just kind of pass by, never stop. And so we're like this kind of phantom way station.
Well, no, that probably has a lot of truth in it because, people from, East Coast, West Coast, bigger cities in the South, they don't think of us. You're right. No. We're flyover country. I mean, especially once you get right outside the Kansas City area into Kansas, Kansas and Nebraska, going up to the Dakotas. My God, it's just nothing but wheat fields and prairie dogs.
Yeah, exactly. But hiding in those wheat fields, prairie dogs, and cornfields is a bunch of weird high strangers that we love.
Absolutely.
Jason, this has been too much fun. I would love to have you back on because I did not even get to half the questions I had for you, which is always a good sign.
Hey, Steve, anytime you want me back on, just let me know, man. Like I said, if you make it later, we'll crack.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. We'll do an after dark episode. Where they can hear us and a little beer buzz to our voices. But buddy, this has been so much fun. I'm so happy to finally meet you, and thank you for the great work. This book is truly legendary. I will have links where you can buy all of Jason's works, but I'm not holding it up very well. But this book, again, I just want to say when I read it years ago, we can credit Tim Banal with this because that's how I learned about you.
Tim's good people.
Tim is great. Tim's a homie. I love Tim. But this book really was the inspiration for me for making Nebraska, especially Eastern Nebraska, my little microcosm, specifically because it just made sense. Document the stuff around you. It is important to cultural history and societal history. It really is. Whether people believe folklore has an impact or not, or whether they like it or not, folklore has a massive impact. on a lot of things, not just art and media, but a lot of how we live our everyday lives. And I think you documenting this stuff is so important because, as you know, if no one does it, these stories will go away.
Yeah.
And they'll disappear. And they're disappearing every day. So, folks, document your local high strangeness. It is a good thing to do. And then share it with everyone else. Write a book. Do whatever you got to do.
You know, and that's what I suggest in the book at the end is if I found all this strangeness 100 miles from my house, you're going to find it in a 100-mile radius of your own, no matter where you are.
Right on. I could not agree. And case in point is myself, because I thought, Nebraska's got some weird things, but we don't have that much. And every month I'm finding all this new stuff. It's endless. So I thank you for your work, my friend. I thank you for your time. This is so much fun. You'll have to come back on again.
I would love to anytime, Steve. Have a great day, man.
You too, brother, and good luck on those bagels, man. That sounds like you're tackling a lot. You're biting off a lot.
I've got some everything bagel seasoning to put on top of them.
Buddy, come on, a nice schmear, maybe some salmon. Ooh, anything goes on that. Friends, thank you so much for listening to another episode of High Strangers. Enjoy your dinners this evening. Peace.